Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. Are you happy to be here? Woo! This is, I believe, the third time we've done a Buzz workshop. Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the second in San Francisco. And I know we're planning on doing one again next year. So thank you so much. This is way bigger than the previous ones, I'm told. I wasn't at the previous ones, but this is awesome. Great turnout. So thank you for coming this morning. Hopefully, Bobby showed you the agenda, or you saw it on the website. I think it's going to be a really interesting day. I plan on being here all day, so hopefully we'll all learn a few things. My name's Machen. I've been at Intel a while, and what I'm responsible for is I manage the developer relations team that works with developers of consumer applications. I'm not so interested in databases or SAP or those types of things, so I tend to focus my attention and my team's attention on apps that can be bought in an app store somewhere is sort of how I generally define it. That certainly includes a large focus on game developers, but we focus on other folks too that do media, video, a bunch of different areas. But gaming increasingly tends to be where we direct more and more of our efforts. In this role, we really got two jobs. One is to make sure that game developers who we work with are aware of what's coming from Intel. And whether that's mobile products, PC products, or server products, we want to make sure that all of you know what we're doing so that hopefully you can take advantage of it. And if you need help with that, we can certainly, that's our job. Second is to make sure that Intel knows what the games industry is doing. We take a fairly long time to design and manufacture a new CPU generation, and sometimes the world can change a lot in between when we first draw it up and when we ship it 4 or 5 or 6 maybe years later. So our job is to make sure that Intel is reacting as well as it can to things that are changing in the industry from year to year, and that feedback from you guys is essential for us to showing up for consumers and delivering the products that consumers and developers need. One new area that I'm not going to talk a lot about, but I'm happy to talk about after. We announced a fairly large diversity initiative back at CES this year in January. And there's a lot of work going on across Intel to try to make Intel, as well as the tech industry overall, a more diverse place. To the extent that that extends to the games industry, I manage that activity, and we've got a number of activities going on there. And I'm happy to talk about that if you catch me after this. So I've only got about 4 slides to talk about. I wouldn't really call this a keynote. I would say this is a few hopefully thought-provoking comments before I hand it over to the guy who really knows what's going on in the industry. So let's talk about what's going on in games for a moment. So the good news, and I'm not going to give any bad news, the good news is that gaming software sales are growing, and they have been growing, and we think they're going to continue to grow, which is important to us because that usually comes along with it gaming hardware sales as well. So this is a great place to be. We see that the overall revenue has gone up by about almost 50% in the last 5 years, and we think it's going to go up significantly the next 5 years. From a PC software standpoint, this means that in 2014, we were at about $26 billion. I should say you were at about $26 billion in software sales, and we expect that to go over $40 billion by 2019. Now, obviously, lots of things can throw that off and change it, but we don't see any reason why growth shouldn't go on for a good long time. And that's why we're so focused on gaming, and why obviously we want to be here to support everything you all are doing. So who's buying all these games? This is sort of how we look at it. We view it as about 700 million active users buying PC game software. And by active users, we mean people that are paying for things as opposed to playing something for free and never buying anything. Bobby was going to introduce me earlier by saying that I was the key customer for free to play because I'm a whale, because my team told him that I spend a lot of money on Clash of Clans. But he didn't get a chance to do that, so he can tell you that later. But anyway, at the top of the pyramid is the enthusiast segment, which is what is normally referred to as the gamers, right? But there's obviously more gamers than just the top of the pyramid, although we love the top of the pyramid because they tend to buy the highest end hardware, the unclocked Core i7s with 6 or hopefully 8 cores as soon as that starts shipping. They buy very high-end GPUs, which NVIDIA and AMD love, and we love that segment. It's just not very big. About 36 million users, I'm sure there's plenty of debate and error bars about that size, but they're the ones that buy the most hardware, buy the most games, and they refresh their hardware most often. So, if you take that 36 million and they're refreshing every 3 years-ish, then, that's about, 10 million units of sales every year, which is nice. It's a high margin business, but it's not a huge business, at least as far as Intel is concerned. So we want to serve those folks, but we want to serve these other two parts of the pyramid as well. The middle section is one that's been getting a ton of focus from us over the past probably 5 years. We call this the mainstream group, and it's almost an order of magnitude bigger than the enthusiasts. And this is really the sweet spot for our Core i5 products, typically 4 cores. And that segment can be subdivided into people that want discrete graphics products or people that are happy with the HD graphics that are integrated with all of our Core i5 CPUs. A big part of the work that my team does is working with game developers to make sure that the HD graphics that comes in those Core i5s delivers an acceptable gaming experience, a nice 30 frame rate experience, even on some of the games that are considered, more enthusiast-focused games. We think this is really great for people that want to take games on the road, on the plane, places like that. And I think, people have been pretty happy with those products. Although, in all honesty, we haven't broken through with HD graphics as a go-to graphics brand for people that want to play games. But people are discovering that there's some really good gaming experiences to be had with Core i5 and our graphics. And then at the bottom, again, another 2x bigger than the mainstream segment. We deliver products for them as well, and these are people that are playing on the web or in much more casual experiences that don't require the horsepower of the CPU or the GPU. So we love having 700 million users in the gaming space to target, and hopefully you do too. So a couple of trends that I just wanted to mention. None of these will be news to any of you, but they're things that I thought are interesting that have happened recently or will be happening in the near future that I'd just like to spend a couple of minutes on. First is the emergence of esports. And if you've been paying attention, this is not a surprise, but a lot of people, it seems to be a little bit under the covers to where people are like, what? You're going to watch video games on TV? That's crazy. People like my wife and my parents. But people who like games and people below a certain age think it's the greatest thing ever. And the numbers prove out the interest is there. We got tens of millions of people watching things like Intel Extreme Masters and the ESL World Championships online. And it's just growing like crazy. And we're investing as much as we can there because we think that's a huge segment that needs some more innovation. It's a large segment that is interested in things beyond just what the players are playing. We have large demo areas showing off mobile products and various other things at our Intel Extreme Masters events, and there's a huge amount of interest from that audience. Those people are all watching on Twitch, which is another thing that has just exploded in the last few years. We work with Twitch to make sure that the content coming from the streamers, whether they are professional streamers or people streaming from their house, have a great experience and have accelerated encode, decode, etc. But Twitch just as a channel is just growing ridiculously, and we are, from a marketing standpoint, wanting to make sure that we're aligned, our messages and Twitch's audiences are up to date on what we're doing. Another kind of streaming, which is streaming the game as opposed to streaming a video, is something that I think is going to emerge in the next few years and really bring a lot of variety in what types of games you play and where you play them. So you may be aware that Valve is going to be launching a device later this year that allows you to stream your PC games to this device that plugs into your TV. And I think that's one option. I don't know if that's going to be very big or not, but it's interesting. And then the extension to that is when those games start to be streamed to all of your devices from a data center somewhere. Obviously, OnLive tried this a few years ago. There was a number of things that kept it from really taking off. But I think in the next few years, those things are going to get solved. And again, we're going to have a lot of variety and diversity as far as where you're going to be able to play games and what type of games you're going to be able to play. I want to make a mention of what we're doing with cameras. Kinect has focused on a certain type of user and a certain type of interaction. We think that we can extend upon that and add those depth sensing cameras that both face you and face the world. And we're working with OEMs to put those cameras on the front and back of PCs and tablets over the next 2 years. And we think that once that hardware is pervasive, that developers are going to really find some interesting things to do with it. And you'll hear from one later today, Choice Provisions, who's building a game that's targeted specifically at the user-facing camera and gesture-type interactions. Another thing you can do with those cameras is do really high-quality scans of people, rooms, and objects. And once you have those scans on your computer, people are probably going to want to print some of them. And I think 3D printing is another area that is going to take off. It's still sort of, very small right now, but once everybody has one and they can print their own toys based on the IPs that game developers create, I think it's going to lead to another expansion of the types of people that you can target with your products. I think it's also going to lead to some interesting IP questions that are not really, my job to solve, but that'll be interesting for all of us to see how that develops in the next few years. And then one more that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention is VR. Obviously, this was born on the PC. Oculus, Valve, and others are targeting experiences that are going to require very high-end PCs to deliver the very high-end experiences that they want to have as their launch experiences. They don't want to ruin the experience or get people sick right out of the gate. So from a high-end enthusiast standpoint, we're 100% focused on supporting those guys and making sure that an Intel machine is going to help deliver the best VR experience you can. We also think that there's some experiences that you should have, in that mid-range segment. Can I connect my headset to a Intel Iris-powered mobile device or laptop for gaming that doesn't require as high spec, or watching movies, or a number of other experiences, and we're working with some partners to sort of figure that out. But there's this elephant in the room, which is, are people really going to want to wear this thing all day long? Do they want to have that detachment from the actual reality in the room? And I think there's a huge divide in what people believe there. I think a lot of game developers have been dreaming of this for 20 years, and it's the coolest thing ever, and it's all they want to work on. And then there's another half of the company saying, whoa, wait a minute, are we going to make any money on this? Because like we talked about on the enthusiast top of the pyramid slide, that's some high-end hardware that a lot of people don't have or can't afford. And you've got people like Tim Sweeney who say, well, it's not for the whole world, while at the same time his company is killing themselves to make sure that every VR game that ships is based on the Unreal Engine. So anyway, I'm not bullish or not bullish, but I want it to run really, 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 really well on Intel, and I want one of those headsets as soon as they ship. And I know our next speaker has got some things to say on this topic as well. So just 2 more slides, and then I'll hand it over. We do a Intel Developer Forum every year in Moscone Center, right down the street. As a follow-on to this event, we're going to be putting together a one-day sort of side event that's integrated but not entirely part of IDF. And we're going to invite all of you to join us for that in August. So there's nothing you have to do. We're going to send you an email invite with a pass to register for the one-day gaming session we're putting together there, and it'll be totally free to attend. We're going to have industry veterans. We're going to have a keynote, which we're now calling Mega Sessions, focused just on gaming. I think it'll be a really interesting thing, and we'd love for you to come. And then just finally, we have an online community focused at all types of software developers developing on Intel architecture. And the section of that focused on gaming is right here, software/game dev, and we'd love you to join and be part of that community.